Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
we're looking at you.
Come in a little bit closer for me, and this is going to be going right onto the Valley Ledger.
All right.
Thank you very much. Count of three, 1, 2, and 3.
I'm almost ready.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
He's photoshopping hair for you and I.
Yeah,
Are you going to interview him with this?
yeah, and that camera. We
Okay.
got cameras on this thing.
All right, so I'm going to lower this because it's too high for when you're sitting.
It's loading.
There we go.
We're
All
good?
right.
By the way, that was the first thing I learned in the film business. Everybody thinks it's lights, camera, action. It's nothing until the sound guy says it is.
Yep. There's
The
no
first-
sound, there's no
The first
film.
set I went on, I was like, why are we all standing here quietly? And he said, it was first film director.
So we have sound or no?
Yeah, we have sound
Until
now.
the sound guy says rolling, there is no
Nope,
movie. It's
there's
like,
no rolling.
People don't know that until your sound guy says.
Yeah, so speed, rolling, and action.
Speed, yeah. Usually it's speed.
Should we start?
Do you want that on the
you can
box?
start. You begin.
All right, so my name's Michael Madden. I'm here at Lehigh University. I'm sitting here with Jeff Hoffman, co-founder of Priceline.com and a bunch of other great companies. And then Sara, the
Hi,
new
everyone.
rock star, interviewer, Latina.
Thank you, Michael.
No, we're at a sharing summit today, and Jeff had flown in, and I actually met Jeff down at Digital Footprint down in Philadelphia, and we were both late. I got stuck in traffic because they had a marathon there, and then Jeff.
I'm surprised you were
late.
late. You're never late.
Well, what happened is they redirected all the traffic, and
Yeah.
when you
You
get
couldn't
to
get into
Philadelphia,
downtown.
oh, it was a
It
nightmare.
was all blocked off and everything.
And then you were flying in after getting hit by a drunk driver the day before, and I was just like,
Wow.
I was just so impressed by you.
Well, I had a little car accident, but I was like, my head went into the windshield hard enough to shatter it, and it was just blood everywhere. Luckily, I'm still alive. Or else, am I dreaming this whole thing? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did die.
Oh yeah, you never know, right? But I was just so impressed by your commitment, and I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs really need to understand is that you showed up. And I run this large networking group out here in the Lehigh Valley, and one of the things I'm trying to get people to understand, some of the 40 and 50-year-old business owners, is how social media is actually changing the world. And like we were doing a Facebook Live broadcast there, and I'm thinking of all the countries that you're in, and you're sitting in a little hut in Africa or whatever, and you actually have the ability to broadcast that.
Isn't that amazing?
Global. Yeah, and how much that's just going to change the ideas and what you were talking about, the sharing economy as far as how you're going to be sharing brains and ideas.
Yeah, it's easier to comprehend. By the way, let me go back to something that you just said. That is one of the things. Again, I have this wall that I write things that are important to me. One of them, in giant letters, it says "Finish Strong."
Yeah.
And I frequently tell. I think I told it there. A story of the 299-300 story.
Yeah.
We won't get into that here, but it was a friend of mine who was an athlete that explained that you don't skip even one exercise one day if you ever want to be a champion. So
Right.
that attitude of finish strong is often the difference. Winning's hard, right?
Yeah.
Doing something amazing is hard.
Right.
So most people quit. The winners weren't smarter than you, they just finished
Yes.
strong. Right? When you gave up, they said, I'm not giving up. I'm not going home till this is done. So I'm glad you pointed that out. So your comment on the sharing economy, everybody knows the part I'm excited about. Everybody sharing a ride to the airport, that's obvious. Everybody
Right.
gets that. Sharing ideas, sharing problems, sharing solutions, that's a million times more powerful, and that's what I'm so excited about. We haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we will.
Yeah, and I was catching the tail end of Sara interviewing you, and you were really, talking to her about being a role model. And it's so, your whole life seems to be about just living what's possible and thinking outside the box and believing that anything is possible. And I think that's a great message that you're sending all around the world. Because that's really where it starts, right? For everybody.
Absolutely. It all starts with your attitude. Your attitude determines your outcome. And you are correct that what Sara is creating and continuing to create, and we'll be seeing her on the big screen one day in big movies.
See you at the Oscars.
What social media and sharing allows us to do is for her to be a role model. So
Right.
somewhere there is a young girl, and whether she's in the inner city of Philadelphia or
Yeah.
Detroit or New York, or whether she's in Ecuador, she can see Sara online and say, I want to be like that. What it helps people realize is anything really is possible. But you need to see, part of it many times is, I can give people a little bit of a shove, but all over the world the importance of social media and of you doing what you do is that when people see someone like them, it changes everything.
Right.
When they say, wait, she's like me, and look at the amazing things she's doing. That's why it's important that, you know, and especially at a time where women don't have the same opportunities around the world,
Right.
that women who are doing amazing things, like the ones like Sarah, the ones we met here today, need to share that.
Right.
Because it'll inspire a lot of people, even when you don't realize it.
Absolutely. I strongly believe sharing is caring. If you have something to give it. That's, I think, our duty as human beings in this society, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm inspired by you guys and, you know, all the great entrepreneurs that like to share their gifts with everyone. So that's where I got that from, because I see it. They are successful, but they share.
Right.
They're not greedy. And that's, I think, the difference between a successful entrepreneur and someone that's not going to rise to the next level.
So why do you do what you do? What's your philosophy? You know, that's deep in your soul.
It is. It's funny
Right?
'cause my friends, we've had other companies that we either took public or sold, and each time people say, "Why don't you just golf now?" I guess that the R word, retire or whatever. I'm actually having the most fun and fulfilling part of my life, and I'm
Right.
not doing business at all.
Right.
The time that I've spent on this mentoring trip, again, I flew here, you know, to Lehigh Valley from Serbia.
Right.
And before that, I was in Macedonia, and before that, in Albania. Here's why. The world's hurting right now, right? We have
Absolutely.
problems everywhere,
Yep.
from ISIS to, I mean, you name it, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
There are problems and real issues. But here's the good news. There's a whole generation of people all over the world that actually want to fix it.
Right.
They are not the government,
I
right? They
agree.
are that young girl in Peru or wherever, or somebody here. And they just need help. They need the tools to do that. Sometimes they need a little shove
Absolutely.
because they don't know they can fix the problem.
Right.
They don't know that they're the one capable of it. So what drives me every day is I was telling the story of Mariana, this girl that I met in Peru, in the slums of Peru, where people live in homes made pretty much of garbage and mud, right? And that's on these hillsides in Peru where the monsoons just start the whole neighborhood over.
Right.
Just a horrible living. And I started mentoring her. That's what I went there for, mentoring her that day. But I just want to tell you, to make it a little more visual. So recently, when we had the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Silicon Valley with Obama, the White House, I was there to speak at that. The White House picked 2 girls from around the whole world to represent what a young girl starting with nothing can make of herself. And when I walked into that room, here's Obama and here's Zuckerberg, and you know who's sitting there on the stage? Mariana. I literally was in tears when I walked in that room.
That's
She and I
amazing.
cried together. I said I could not possibly be more proud that she went from a girl in the slums who was going to make a difference to doing so well with her company helping young girls out of poverty. That's what she does, by teaching them how to code, that she was on stage with Obama and Zuckerberg. In fact, even more, there were only 2 girls I mentioned. After I recovered from my emotional outburst of seeing Mariana and how amazing she's doing, I looked, and the other girl they picked was an Egyptian girl, and the Egyptian girl's name is Mai, and she was somebody I met pretty much right after the Egyptian Revolution, and been working with her since then as well. So to walk in to an event like that and see Obama and Zuckerberg and only 2 girls in the whole world, and there are 2 girls we've been mentoring
Right.
that I met when they had
yeah,
nothing.
That's a big testament to you,
that-
Mariana. You
well,
lifted her up to
it's
want
about
to do that.
It's about them, but it's why I get up every morning.
Yeah.
It's why I do all this travel, because if we can do anything that helps other people make a difference, that's our role, right? So the more Marianas and Mais that we create, the more young people, it doesn't matter what age, the more people that wind up making a difference in the world around them. And if you help even that tiny amount, it's worth it.
It's something.
So
Yes.
again, when I come from some of these countries, my friends say, why don't you just go to the club? There's a really big reason, because if we don't help those people, they might not get those opportunities.
And do you think like Americans in general are skewed if they've never traveled abroad? Like they don't appreciate that we have drinking water and electricity that turns on and the lights come on.
So-
You know, and that's right or no?
Oh, big time. Not
Right?
just Americans, but you know, part of being involved in discount travel companies like Priceline was, even though it's a successful business, we really did hope that we could make travel accessible to more people
Right.
by bringing the cost down. I remember once I was going to give a speech in Connecticut, and I was driving along, I saw a house that I swore I'd seen before. It turns out I'd seen it on the History Channel. It was Mark Twain's house. So I said, can you stop? And the driver said, sure. So I go in, and the first thing you see in Mark Twain's house is a quote that means so much to me. It says, "Travel is the fatal enemy of prejudice." And he was right, because the more places you
Yeah.
go, I just literally did a tour through pretty much the Arab Spring, the Muslim countries.
Right.
So if I was in America and that was my only view of Muslims, it'd be one thing. If I
Right.
never left here.
Right.
But when I went to all the Muslim countries and spent time with people, my whole perspective is different. So by the same token, we took a bunch of young entrepreneurs to Africa, and they saw a lot of deaf people, and they said, why doesn't someone give them a hearing aid? And one of the Africans said, we had hearing aids. And they said, why aren't you wearing them? And they said, because you can't, there's nowhere to buy a battery
No.
Right.
in the Serengeti. They said, you guys don't, that's what, to your point, we don't understand. The Americans say, oh, give those poor people a hearing aid.
Right.
I'll give them a hearing aid. And they said, you guys really don't understand. We don't have 7-Eleven. We don't have convenience stores. There's nowhere to buy a battery. And they kind of laughed. They said, we'd rather almost not have your help than have people that have made no attempt to understand the way we live. When I was giving a talk recently, I gave a talk on the state of global entrepreneurship at the United Nations. And they asked me, what's the key? And I said something a little sharp on purpose, but I said, you have to get dirty.
Yes.
You can't sit in your office in Washington,
Yes.
D.C. or New York and understand how the world works.
100%.
Right.
You have to get dirty. You got to be in the village and in the dirt. So I'm glad that you said that because
Yeah,
it's not Americans' fault, but they really don't know.
Right. So looking back at your life, what would you want somebody to remember? Like, what is the one thing you're like on your tombstone?
So I do have I'm glad you asked that because a couple of years ago, my best friend in the world drowned in the Irish Sea in late 30s, and it made me think about everything. But I'm just going to tell you this. I went to the funeral. His parents asked me to do the eulogy, and we're sitting at the funeral, and people are summarizing his life. His name was Michael, and I said, no, that's not what Michael was about. You guys didn't get it, right? And I started thinking something. What if this was my funeral?
Right.
And I'll ask everybody listening to think of that. If this was your funeral today, I ask people to do this all the time. Write it down. What do you think people would say right now about you? How would they summarize your life if this is your funeral? So while I was standing at Michael's funeral before I did the eulogy, I grabbed a pen and I wrote it down. And unfortunately, what I wrote down was that guy, he made a lot of money and had a nice house and built good businesses. And I looked at that and I said, if that's my tombstone, my whole life was a waste, if that's it. So then I'll challenge you to do the second thing. Write down what you think people would say if you died today. Then write down what you want them to say. Okay? And I said, what do I want people to say? Right, and then
Don't
fix it.
charge that.
Yeah.
Then make sure, then ask yourself this, what are you doing to make that possible? So I'll tell you, I thought to myself, I don't want to be judged by the number of dollars I made. I want to be judged by the number of other people's lives I made better. So what I want to happen at my funeral is not people to look in a casket and say, that's an expensive suit. But I want people to look in a casket and as they walk by say, he had an impact on me. He helped me in some way. So that's why I do what I do now, because I would love the net of my life to be that I did something for somebody other than me, that I somehow impacted somebody else's life.
I agree 100%. I actually thought about that the other day. I was like, if I died, what would people say during my funeral? And that changed my course of how being a role
it gives you
model and
perspective.
touching people. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like a weird thing to think about, but it's not at the same time. It really changes how you pursue your career and how you go about
It
things.
should. You should have a North Star, some kind of guiding light that drives the decisions you make. And you should ask yourself, whatever it is that you care about, that you want your life to be in the end, every decision you make, did it go towards it or away from it? So it's easier for me to answer questions when people say, hey Jeff, would you do this? If it's driving me towards my goal, if it's on my mission, I'll do it. If it's not, life's too short, which is what I learned when my best friend died. So.
Yeah.
And can you give people a little perspective? I was interviewing David Gritz, and one of the things I wanted, he's like an excellent networker. And I asked him, what gave you the gumption to ask this gentleman right here with all this prominence to do what you're doing today? And most people think of you as this, put you on a pedestal and they're intimidated by your stature, instead of just saying he's another person. And don't you think it's refreshing when somebody just kind of walks up to you and sees you as a person versus
Of course.
what you did in life?
It's really funny because we call that concept, I call it, I shouldn't say it, I made this up. It's the prettiest girl at the dance theory. And this is, let me explain that. When I was in high school, my best friend she was just my friend, but she was the prettiest girl in the school. She got voted most beautiful every year. A Friday would come up, and it'd be a dance, and she'd say, can you take me to the dance? I'd say, really, you don't have 50 dates? And she said, Jeff, everybody thinks that everybody else asked me, so no one ever asked me. Every guy says, well, I'm sure she has 50 dates, so she never gets one. So I started thinking when I was young, I wanted to reach a prominent businessman to see if he'd be my mentor. And I thought, well, I'm sure everybody's calling him, he won't take my call. But I thought to myself, well, wait, that's what Jenny always tells me. Right? No one ever asked me out because everyone thinks everyone else did. So I picked up the phone and called. And when he took the meeting, I said, why did you come here? He said, because you asked. He said, you're the only person that actually said. He said, we do get lots of requests, but yours was very direct and heartfelt. So I took that to heart. I remembered what it felt like when that guy said, yes, I will help you. So I try to make sure I give that back when David or somebody calls and says, could you participate in our event?
No, I think it's great.
If it's
and
on
just
mission, then I'll show up.
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of people that miss opportunities because they're just intimidated by the situation, and if they just you know, from your perspective, looking at the person, I think that you would be very open. You're a very accessible person. I'm pretty impressed with your whole thing there. And one of the other things I wanted to touch upon too is that you talk in simple thoughts. Which, like, even when you were explaining what was going on, that was a very complex, you know, overall thing, but you broke it down very simply. So, you know, just a general person could understand that.
Well, first of all, thank you. That makes my day because that's one of the most important things for me when I do speak. My whole life, people would explain something complicated, and I would always say, okay, fine, but what does that mean?
Right, exactly.
So my own style evolved to, if you can't explain it simply, move on to the next thing.
Right.
So I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to explain complex things simply. That's important to me, so thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you broke it down beautifully.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so in closing, why don't you say something in Spanish? Can you say something in Spanish for
Don't put him on the
Okay, no.
spot. Don't put him on the spot. I'll ask him.
Give
in
us a
Spanish.
phrase we can say. We'll get the dialect right.
Muchas gracias por ver.
Muchas
Nos vemos
gracias
la
por
próxima
ver.
vez.
Oh, I can't get that. Yeah,
How
what
about-
do you want to say in Spanish?
Adios,
Adios, amigos.
Adios,
I'll just
amigos.
make it-
That's good. Adios, amigos.
No, I appreciate what you did,
Yes,
and
thank you.
I'm shaking your head now.
Thanks,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Mr. Hoffman, how about no paren la fiesta? Don't stop the party.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Except I got to get permission first because we're actually doing a project now with Pitbull.
Oh,
And I'm not
are you
sure. He wants to be an entrepreneur and help people that came up like him. Now he's Mr. Worldwide, involved in a startup with him. So I don't want to get beaten up for stealing his line.
But it's a
So don't
line.
eat that.
It's
Is
not
there,
the
is there
whole.
anything you want
No,
to say to
I-
an audience out there in the internet space?
You know, just by virtue of the fact that you're seeing this online proves the point that you live in the democracy of information.
Right.
You live at a time where anything you need to know and anyone you want to reach, you probably can.
Right.
You just have to try.
Right.
So here's people sitting at home on their couch complaining about their life, and the internet, the planet Earth, is sitting right in front
How
of them.
about it?
Find a way, go out, meet people, contact people, learn things.
There's no excuses.
Right, and
No
quit making excuses.
All right. So
Thanks
let
again.
this so people will watch it. It's not a 50-minute video on Facebook and nobody tunes in. So you know how it is.
Thank
All right,
you so
I
much.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
guys very much for having me.
Thank you.